Hey, you're listening to Fat and Greasy Citizens, a podcast about Shakespeare. I'm Fat.
And I'm Greasy. Every week we do a deep dive into every act of every Shakespeare play ever written, mostly while drinking.
More specifically, I'm Chuck. I'm a former English major and now a digital editor who cares a lot about Shakespeare.
And I'm Gabe. Let's do it!
Greetings, subjects! It is us, Q to the E to the 1, coming at you live from beyond the grave, welcoming you to Fat and Greasy Citizens. In this episode, Comedy of Errors Act 4, in which Antipholus of Ephesus, having been arrested for non-payment of a gold chain he thinks he never received, his twin brother Antipholus of Syracuse has it, sends who he thinks is his trusted slave Dromio, actually the Syracusan twin of his brother's slave, also called Dromio because of course he is, to his wife Adriana for bail money. Meanwhile, Antipholus of Syracuse is wondering why the hell everyone in Ephesus talks to him like they know him, and is genuinely confused when his slave Dromio, the actual one this time, hands him bail money he never asked for. Then a prostitute approaches them, asking for the gold chain, so Antipholus assumes she's a witch. Meanwhile, back in the jail, Dromio of Ephesus has no bail money for his master, so Antipholus beats him mercilessly, and Adriana assumes Antipholus has been possessed and needs to be exorcised. This act is very funny and isn't afraid to go Elizabethan on your ass. Enjoy.
So I really enjoyed Act 4 of Comedy of Errors. I thought Act 3 was a big old dumpster fire, but this felt like back to like good wacky energy, good Three's Company energy.
It's funny you say Three's Company because I wrote down it's very sitcom-y. like it really is the sitcoms that we watch have a lot of homage to, they're all homages to the farces of, the Enlightenment and stuff like that. And of course that came from somewhere too. And this is the exact same formula, he spent a lot of time building it, So Act 4 is kind of the payoff for a lot of the Comedy of Errors, where now all those conflicts are coming to a head.
Yeah, I feel like he doesn't know how to structure a play yet, but like he knew he wanted these payoffs, and so Act 3 was just like, well, you're going to try and get in the door, and you can't get in the door. So just rattle the doorknob for 5 minutes, and we'll do that with dialogue. And when that doesn't work, we'll just make fat girl jokes for another 10 minutes, and that's an act. And it was really bad to sit through, but now we are at a place where we can start to get some payoffs.
Well, Cheers was very similar. It was just fat girl jokes.
It wasn't?
No, I have no idea.
I was like, oh, man.
I remember, I watched the first episode of Cheers. It's on Netflix, and I watched it not long ago, and it surprisingly holds up very well.
That makes me happy. Like, I know The Cosby Show with the obvious asterisk holds up really well, and it would make me sad if Cheers didn't hold up. I think Night Court does not, which does not surprise me. But that's okay. That's what I needed from Night Court. I got in the mid-'80s. I don't need it to be.
Well, that's the thing, is that I think Night Court is a good example of what I think the quintessential 80s sitcom was, which was a lot of, like, you had Harry Anderson, like, literally, making faces, on punchlines.
Yeah, it was no one's job to act on that show. It's like Harry Anderson as Harry Anderson, John Larroquette as John Larroquette, Marky Post as what she is, which is the most beautiful woman in the room at any particular moment. I want to say Martin Mole, but it's not. What's Mole's name?
Oh, Robert Mole.
Robert Mole.
No, not Robert Mole.
I think it might be.
Yeah. He played Bull Shannon.
Yeah, so I'm now going to assume that Martin Mole and him.
Robert,
I think Mole is Mull, but I'd still like to think they are
Robert
related.
Oh, that's gonna haunt me now. Yeah, he's really good, and he actually ended up being an amazing voice actor. He was on the Batman animated series.
Oh yeah, I think I knew that. What character is he?
He was Two-Face Harvey Dent.
I thought that might be the case. That makes me happy. Okay.
He still does it, I believe, or unless he's dead. I think he's still alive. No, I think he still does it.
Editor's note. Following the year 2020, when this podcast was recorded, Richard Mole, who the boys are talking about here, has sadly passed away in 2023.
Anyway, it's very sitcom-y is Act 4.
I enjoy. So first of all, I think it's well structured. I really enjoy that. Like they ratchet things up throughout, but there's a ratcheting up of just hell and devil imagery throughout. And from the very first line, they start talking about the guy who owes another guy money. Talks about how essentially like, well, I offered to give you this money to that I need for a ship on Pentecost, and it just seems like out of the gate they are talking about like, we're going to put this in a weird, for no reason, we're going to start mentioning biblical things, and it happens throughout, and it has a nice payoff when you get to start slapping around a minister towards the end of the act.
I think that's amazing. Like, I wrote a note saying I think it's amazing that it's going the route of possession.
Yeah,
like it gets into this very weird, like, you know, and if you think about it, it's not. That's probably what would have happened, because a long time ago I read half of Foucault's Madness and Civilization and thought I knew everything about madness and craziness. I should probably read the whole thing. But
not this year.
It won't be this year, though. But like this idea of how insane people were treated over the course of centuries, you know, and Shakespearean time, Shakespeare has a lot of characters who are fools who have a kind of connection to heaven. Like they speak truths that no other character could even possibly conceive of because of their insanity. However, this totally surprised me, because this is probably closer to what it was like for people who are crazy. Like, that guy has the devil in him. we're going to rip the devil out.
They say he's got the devil in him. Let's throw him someplace cold and dark. It's just great. It's just like, he's crazy. I know what to do for this guy. You throw him in a well.
What I love what I love about it is that the teacher, the schoolmaster guy, says something like he has to be thrown in some dark place. So I had it random. Doesn't matter. Right. Just give me a dark,
like a
just a dark place.
Cave? Yeah, it's fine. Just
some dark place.
Listen, there's differing views in the science right now. Some say bottom of a well. Some say a bear cave. Some say a wine cellar. I'd say try all three.
For instance, I'm a schoolmaster practicing medicine.
And by medicine, I mean putting my hands on people and screaming, devil, out.
Yeah. And after that, I have some papers to grade.
Also, this act just brings the beatings back. Like, really, no one being, as far as I can recall, being beaten at all in Act 3. And they make up for it in Act 4.
People are talking about beating. People are getting beaten.
There's an ongoing, like, there's nothing better than a slave owner saying to a slave, "Go get me a rope so I can beat everyone in my house."
Yeah, that's how it begins.
It's chef's kiss. Like, say, slave.
Yeah,
I'm angry at my wife, but also people around my wife. So can you, because I won't buy my own rope, but buy a rope, and I assume he just knots the rope many times, the better to beat someone with. I don't know exactly how you use a rope to beat people, but
yeah, it like so much in the Shakespeareanness of it. It's like you can see the connection, but it's like he's not using the word right, but it's Shakespeare, so you can kind of get away with it.
And so I'm still trying to figure out like what the line is for me when puns work for me and when they don't. I think it's all about brevity. But when Dromio S says, "Oh, I buy 1,000 pounds a year, I buy a rope," it strikes me as funny because the joke is, you're going to beat people 1,000 times with this rope. What a bargain. And I think first of all, I think it's brevity, but also like when it's so wonderfully, like, again, in a Tex Avery way, highlights like how crazy it is. It's just like, oh, this is great. This rope is worth 1,000 pounds because you will pound your wife, your sister-in-law, your various slaves, everyone else you hurt inside, and you'll probably do it all year. So, 1,000 pounds. Get it? You're funny, boss.
And it's funny though is that line in particular, at least in what I was reading, has an asterisk next to it saying that it's an obscure line that a lot of people don't know what to do with.
Yeah, that's what mine said too, and I was like, that is a pretty straightforward pun.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is, but I think the interpretation that I saw was that he's talking about he's buying a rope for his own beatings, almost like go buy a rope. He's like, oh yeah, if I buy a rope, I buy 1,000 beatings. So okay, I buy a rope, that kind of thing,
But
either way,
But exactly, there are things I can't follow at all. And for mine, the description was a puzzling line. Perhaps Dromio thinks of the rope as an instrument for beating himself. It's like, hence his preposterous analogy. And it's like, no, he knows he's going to be beat by his owner. I don't know. It's strange what things in the footnotes get marked out as clear and which ones get marked out as perplexing as it is in my text.
I would love to be in the room for those decisions.
Well, this is obvious. This on the other hand,
scholars for the scholars for like the Arden collection of the Shakespeare library where they're just sitting around saying, what do we do about the rope line? And everybody's like, oh.
Or when where they're just like, well, obviously, anytime he beats the slave, it's hilarious. But what's troubling is, you're like, wait there, Arden Shakespeare. I also just felt like at this point that like if the rhythm feels like actual people talking or if it just feels pleasing, that works for me. But like there's like 60 lines where they go back and forth where it's just like, okay, so give me the chain. No, give me the chain. Give me the chain. No, give me the chain. And he keeps confusing with the merchant whether or not he's owed the chain or whether he gave him the chain or if his wife has the chain. But it just works as proper dialogue and it has a good rhythm back and forth. And I just really enjoyed it. They're nice like 2 lines back and forth, just good staccato dialogue. Like it was just pleasing to read.
Yeah, and that's where I think the payoff works the best. Well, that in the devil possession scene, but this idea of 2 people who know what reality is, and know what they saw, and know what they experienced, trying to convince the other that they are somehow and both of them is right. Both are right. So like the comedy, like it is so pleasing that the rhythm will give me the chain. I can't give you the chain because I don't have the chain. You have the chain.
And it works that you can feel that like the awkwardness of the merchant in that he's got a guy who's about to leave on a ship he owes money to. He's got a cop right next to him, and so he keeps trying to be really polite. And he's like, "So give me the chain." He's like, "Well, go ask my wife." And I'm like, and he's like, "Okay, so are you going with me to give your wife the thing so you can pay?" Like it holds up effectively. I don't know. Like I can feel that guy starting to like grit his teeth and like wonder if he's going insane because he keeps being polite, as in keeps busting his chops.
Again with the magic police officer too. It's amazing how it's like this officer here will arrest you, and I was like, what officer? When did the officer come in? Like I honestly missed that. So like it's almost like every play we've done so far, where there's like just within arm's reach at all times who can be brought in for comedic effect. It made me laugh out loud because it's like, what the fuck just happened? Well, like the cop, he just like, this cop will arrest you. It's like, that's right, I will. And I was like, whoa, he just came out of nowhere.
That and like none of them think anyone's being shaken down at this point. So there's no reason to have a cop with you to go and collect the debt. Like they're all completely laid back and he's like, listen, I'm sorry to ask you this, but I'm off for Persia. So I'm going to need the money. And he's like, it's fine. I got a guy. He owes me the chain. It's going to be fine. And like there's no reason to have a cop except that cops appear whenever necessary in Shakespearean plays.
And I'm glad you mentioned that thing. I happen to have a guy who owes me exactly what I owe you. That's so sitcom-y.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, you know what? I know I owe you $5, but I know this guy owes me $5, and I'll just wait for that guy. Like it's like so out of like Jack Tripper. Like I know this thing is wrong, but I'm going to wait for this other thing. To
put entirely too much of a bow on it. Antipholus accuses Angelo, the guy who wants the money for the chain, accuses him of acting in bad faith, and he says, "You use this dalliance to excuse your breach of promise to the Porpentine," which is a bar. And so it's like he's saying, like, you are besmirching the name of the Regal Beagle by not sticking with our agreement. Like,
by Central Perk.
What is agreed upon in either Cheers or Central Perk or any of the places where we regularly shoot our 3-camera comedy,
right?
must not be rent asunder.
Oh, I think this place should have been called the Porpentine. That'd have been awesome.
Yes,
and Larry would have. Well, you know what? Another thing about this setup and about, because it is so sitcom-y, I just, like, the whole time I was reading, I was like, it's so much of the comedy in this. Yes, there is a comedy of errors, like literally twins not knowing that the other one exists in the space. But there's so much that hinges on commerce and trade. Again, like, I know we made that point in the very first episode of this, where it's just like it's like if Ghostbusters was all about the business side of it, and like the ghosts were completely secondary. It's like, whose accounts receiving over here? Well, like jokes about local funding and stuff like that. It's like there's so much of the comedy here is on like the money side of things.
Yeah, I feel like Act 3 is like Phantom Menace, but I feel like Act 4 is actually like Ghostbusters, because both Ghostbusters brings in the EPA and local municipal politics, and it works. Like, that's fuck it, let's go debate the mayor. Let's make the bad guy from the EPA. Let's like worry about whether or not you're zoned to have a nuclear reactor in your basement, and that will be the central conflict. You're not zoned for this. But like, it works because it actually moves the plot along. And here it's just like, a cop actually moves the plot along. And it's funny, like, since things are actually happening, it's funny that a guy owes a guy there's a guy who owes money for a ship, the guy with the ship owes money to the guy with the chain with the chain owes money to one twin. Like, it just feels like it propels things ahead instead of just people talking about, like, trade policy in a small Italian town.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's amped up, but I still go back. While I was reading this, I was going back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like, this is a lot to do with commerce. Like, this whole play is driven by that. Like it's set up where, it's even set up where in the beginning where merchants are killed if they screw up.
This is a world where no one blinks at that, where it's just like, well, yeah, I've got debts, or I'm in the wrong place and I could buy my way out of this. But if I don't have debts, or if I can pay my debts, great. But if I can't, then I'll die. And I accept that. Listen, you're a fair duke.
That is perfectly normal.
I also I like that in Act 4 we finally get the sex worker, aka the courtesan.
Yes.
But it's like, again, if you want to like amp up the comedy, it's the same here as in Bachelor Party or any of Tom Hanks's earlier films, like or Trading Places or anything else. Just like actually bring the sex worker on screen. I feel like,
where is the groom? In the bedroom. Whatever happened to that guy?
I don't know. That guy had that role. Actually, I think that
little nebbishy guy.
Yeah, but he was in a couple things, right? He's not just in that. Like,
I don't remember him in anything else, but I mean, he was such a chameleon. I mean, he could be anybody.
That actor, Bruce Willis.
You know him now as the immortal Liam Neeson.
Which Jedi did this guy become? What? Oh no, I did see one other character from Bachelor Party in a semi-dramatic role sometime recently. I can't remember what it is, so I won't waste time trying to think of it. But
really?
Who's that guy? How do I know
that's
that
interesting.
Guy? And I think it was like his main friend who says, "Wow, look at the cans on that bimbo," but I can't be sure. So
the guy with doesn't he have like a tie permanently tied around his head?
Yeah,
for most of that movie. Yeah.
His coolest friend.
Right. The Larry. To continue the Three's Company. The Larry of
Jack.
Two's Jack. Yeah, exactly.
But I love that she's that the sex worker comes in and just starts demanding things. I love that she adds like one more MacGuffin, where it's just like, you've already got 19 MacGuffins moving around here, and she's like, oh, but you took my ring, and you said you'd give me a chain. It's completely unnecessary, but since we're already in Stupid Town, it's great. Like, yeah. I would have to think that if this play is done well, there's no way you can keep track of this stuff, but it's just like, it's so absurd and fun enough to just have like, you're thinking you're going to get one thing from the courtesan coming on stage, and she's like, no, actually, I need the ring, because the ring you said you were going to give me for the chain, the ring is worth more than the chain. Where is the ring? Also, are we running off together? And like, I didn't know if we were ever going to meet all we knew was that he knew a woman at a bar that was attractive that he wanted to go to take a break from his wife. And so the fact that it's actually a sex worker is fun. The fact that she's just looking for a chain is fun. And it's wonderful that she says, like, I don't know how to get my chain, so I'm going to go to his house and ask his wife for the chain. It's just like a really nice amping up of everything.
Yeah, and I think you have an opportunity for a visual gag, because as I was reading it, I thought, well, she's only been referred to by Antipholus of E at one point. She's not seen. She hasn't been seen. So, like, when she walks on, I think, to make it clear to the audience, she has to be a courtesan, like, writ large for the
big neon sign.
Yeah, for the thing to read as such, you know, like it has, like, that's your opportunity for, like, because I think we've seen that character too before in other things, you know, like the sex worker who is pissed off that she's been ripped off, you know, like I feel like I've seen that in a million things. I want to say DC Cab, but I haven't seen that movie in about 30 years, so I probably am misremembering.
I actually never saw DC Cab, so I think I will have to rent it now. My brain.
All I remember is Irene Cara is in it, and that's a big deal to one of the characters. That Irene Cara of Flashdance is in the movie somewhere.
I'll tell you what I remember about sex workers on film is to go back to Bachelor Party. Having no idea what the prostitutes are supposed to be doing when they go to the wrong party.
Yes.
And they just have these enormous vibrators and a couple cat of nine tails. And it's just this 8-year-old boy being like, I think this is supposed to be sexy. I don't know what sex is. I thought I might have an idea of what sex is.
Right.
These people have wands and like leather fringe, and I'm sure I'll never know
what is
actually going on here.
Considering the content that the two of us grew up with, it is shocking to me that neither of us are sexually deviant. Because I was just thinking the other day, like I was watching Porky's, and I should be on like a list somewhere. Like there should be no reason that I saw that movie and it didn't completely pervert my entire, sexual maturity. But here we are. I'm actually a normal human being with normal desires and needs.
Reading Shakespeare.
Reading Shakespeare. Well adjusted enough to read and analyze Shakespeare.
The last thing I really liked about scene one is, do you know that meme where it's a screenshot of local news, and it says, it's got a quote. It says, "What are you going to do? Stab me?" And it's attributed to a man who was stabbed.
Right.
And that's what he says. He's like, "What are you going to do?" At the end of this, he says, "Arrest me if you dare." And it's just like, yeah, that's the whole point. I'm allowed to arrest you if you don't have money to pay this guy. And he's like, "Well, arrest me if you dare." And it's just like, yeah, I'm going to tie you up now, and you're going to go away. I don't know. I enjoyed the funniness of him trying to challenge the cop whose only purpose is to arrest people who are in debt, and then being arrested. It's just,
yeah. And as that happened, I thought to myself, and I think, it occurs to me now too, where Antipholus of Syracuse is a dick. Antipholus of Ephesus is a dick. Everybody, who do you root for in this play? Like, there's nobody that is on your side, that you want to be on their side. Everybody kind of sucks.
I feel like this is one of those like rare Daffy Elmer Fudd cartoons where it's just like, oh, like you're both like, neither of you are actually redeeming, but it's fun to watch you shoot each other. So
yeah, that's the thing is like, but we don't have a bugs. We don't have a bugs to
no
bugs.
To
comment. Yeah, like there's nobody who has any kind of sense enough to, like, maybe you can make the argument that Luciana is maybe the most sane.
Yeah.
But even she is kind of out there as a character.
No, I think she's gone. I think everyone in here is fun trash. It like reminds me of, like, again, to go back to sitcoms, like where sitcoms have to get in like season 7, where everyone's already like dated everyone in the group 3 times, but they've never committed to anything because that doesn't work for the structure of it. And like at that point you're like, oh, none of these characters are redeeming because like that nothing changes and they're all sad and making fun of each other. And that it seems like that's where these characters are. Like none of them are actually like fun people you root for, but it's fun to watch them fall down and hurt themselves.
And make fat jokes, because there's another one, Dromio. He can't help himself. Dromio of S. I had to look up Dousabel because I assumed it was derogatory, but he's actually saying sweetheart. He's calling her he's like, okay, I'll go get the bail money from Adriana's house, but that's where my Dousabel. Obviously, he's using it sarcastically, but it means sweetheart. I thought that was pretty sweet, but then he ends with like she's still fat. Like, he kind of says, well, she's too big for me to ever like totally encompass. So like she had to get one in before the end of the scene. Oh, and also Adriana. Speaking of the ladies,
yeah, ladies.
You at one point you were looking at lists of insults directed at women, and there were quite a few. And Adriana actually comes out with a huge list for Antipholus. Well, she thinks it's of E, but it's of S.
Oh yeah, no,
and it's long. Yeah, I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget it. He is deformed, crooked, old, and sere, ill-faced, worse-bodied, shapeless everywhere, vicious, ungentle, foolish, blunt, unkind, stigmatical, and making worse in mind.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know what's...
And it rhymes.
I mean, I didn't even notice that it rhymed. That's fantastic. But just like, ill-faced and worse-bodied. That is great. He is ugly as sin, and his body is so much worse than his face. That is,
and I like this. Might be, is this the first time we see Shakespeare doing his Shakespeare-y thing where he's like making up words with stigmatical? It might be the first time.
Beautiful, like
yeah, stigmatical. Like I look at it and I'm like that's a cool invention. Obviously, maybe invented for the scansion so that it hits the beat. But it's just awesome. Like out of nowhere, we've got this new word, stigmatical.
No, that stanza is fantastic. And I blew right past it, so I'm glad you paused on it. I didn't have anything that jumped out at me in this second scene until
she immediately contradicts herself after that too, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
She's like, he's a piece of shit, but a well-meaning piece of shit who I love.
Yeah, but he's mine.
Yeah, I talk shit about him, but he's not
my guy. The only thing the first thing that jumped out of here for me is when Dromio runs on the scene and the rhythm of what he's saying just feels like he's out of breath. So he's like, here, go, the desk, the purse. Sweet now, make haste. And she says, how hast thou lost thy breath? And he says, by running fast.
It's a funny joke.
It really is. It's just like a nice little funny joke.
Yeah. Oh wow! Have you lost your breath? And again, of all the characters, who's gonna like just literally answer it? Well, I was running fast.
And it just
didn't you see me?
It seems in character with him because like he knows he's gonna get beaten for doing anything wrong, so he's just like. By running fast? Like what? What the fuck did I do wrong? Why are you always beating me? And then right after that, the devil talk really starts. He describes the cop as a devil. He weirdly describes him, I think, either here or later as Adam, but not Adam, like an evil angel. And this part again, I think if. I'm going to repeat what I said before, but I think like my unified theory of ongoing puns is if like they stayed at 4 or 5 lines, then I'm fine with them because this scene ends with like a useless back and forth about like how time can work or time can run backwards, or men sometimes.
He's at it again.
But it's only 4 or 5 lines. So
yeah.
Like, hey, if you want to riff for 20 seconds, it's great. It's just when it's 3 minutes of various women's body parts being part of the globe or anything else where that's where like I retch in my mouth a little bit. But this was just like 5 lines of like you're trying to make some puns. If it doesn't land, that's fine. We can cut it. It doesn't feel like
I think that I would have used if I were directing this, I would use it as a moment where like he is at it again, where it's like, you know what time is like, and then everybody on stage is like, Jesus Christ.
But he's just said the guy's in hell, and he's just like, well,
well, time does move backwards because time is like a thief. All right.
You did say my husband's being beaten in hell, right?
Yeah. What is the end of? Let me look that up because I wonder if it naturally has. What scene is that?
That is scene 2 at the very end.
But I want to say that there's an abrupt ending to that where it's kind of like, here's the money, go away. That kind of thing.
Adriana runs. Luciana comes back on screen, gives Adriana the money, and she says, "Go, Dromio. There's the money. Bear it straight. Bring the master home immediately."
Yeah.
She walks out. She says, "Come, sister. I impress it down with conceit. Conceit, my comfort and my injury." And again, one of the weird things here is that it is uncommented upon by Adriana that Luciana's like, yeah, and then he tried to seduce me. And she's like, okay, and then what happened? But there's never a point where Adriana's like, sister, what the fuck? Or like, do you have feelings for him or anything else? She's like, okay, and keep giving me details. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And you were turned on. Okay. Yeah. And then what did you do? Okay. Like, it's, instead of feeling like the characters are off, it feels like it reinforces like that these are just weird sisters.
Well, you know, what's interesting is that she asks Luciana at one point, because she's like, well, then he said all these wonderful things about me. And then Adriana replies something to the effect of, well, what'd you say about him?
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of like, that's not the point, lady. You know, like the point is he was coming on to me. Do you get that part? You know, like she's like not even thinking about that. It's more about, you know, the fact that anybody like, well, were you interested in him? Because I'll kill you. You know, like,
but that makes it makes both of them fun characters to just be like, oh, you're insane. Like you're going to get competitive right now while he's in jail and you're asking for details. Like, I like that, like they're continuing to be insane, which is a nice segue to scene 3, where again, like in the last act, I felt like it would like beggared belief that that you end the act with him saying like, and then I'll just walk around town and see if anything were to happen to me that would move the plot forward. But in this, he's actually talking about how like, this is a great town. People compliment me. I go in, if I pass a tailor, they say that I should try things on and they measure me. And I feel like it goes far enough into just obvious stupidity that's fun. Like he's now so dumb. Like it's like Dumb and Dumber.
Everybody knows my name.
Yeah, it's like Dumb and Dumber where he's just like, and then his head fell off. Like he's just like, I'm getting measured for clothes and I don't have any money. But gosh, what a fun town.
I think Dromio of S echoes something like that. This is a great town. Maybe we should stay. You know, it's like, this is crazy, but I think we should stay here.
Yeah, well, I think he says that when talking about the fat woman that he does not love. He's just like, well, I don't like her, but we think we should stay here.
But I think, you know, I'm coming around to it. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So, like, what I love about this is, yes, Antipholus of S is definitely, like, clearly an idiot and not putting it together. But I love that the sort of backwoods superstitions that we've already established for him are now that kind of like this big city's full of the devil. Now it actually comes to an interesting head where he kind of starts the ball rolling on this, the devil is everywhere kind of thing, even though he's not in the scene where his counterpart is being accused of being possessed. Like this idea of everybody's possessed, you know, this whore is the devil, you know, it kind of starts with him, you know, this everybody is evil all of a sudden, and it's great. Like it just
kicks in. And it doesn't make any sense, but like off and away from him in another scene, Dromio calls. He refers to the officer as a devil, and then here, this is where actually he refers to the officer as some kind of Adam being an evil angel, and then Dromio sees the courtesan coming and saying, "Oh, here comes the angel," and then they quickly turn from like, "Oh no, she's not an angel, she's the devil." He actually turns to her and says, "Satan, avoid." Like, it's just great to just like see a woman and call her Satan right away.
It's such a wonderfully convenient thing to say too, from a man's point of view. I always love that. Like when when you watch movies of olden times, when people say, "Oh, loose women are the devil," but it's like such a convenient thing to say. It's like, well, she had magic. She filled me with magic. That's why I banged her. Yeah. It's not me. Well, it's the devil. What essentially says. He says,
it's fun because it's so stupid. He's like, well, you would think women are angels, but women are in fact, but angels give off light, and light is heat, and that the devil gives off heat. And so in fact, the thinner and more attractive a woman is, the more she is the devil. So run away from the devil, and also don't give her the thing that she is owed, because she is the devil. And he says out loud, he says, don't give her the chain, because she'll shake it like the devil and frighten us. And again, it sounds like something out of Monty Python. He'd be like, she will shake a chain at us.
Yeah.
You cannot give her what she is rightfully owed. And I had to check because I assumed that, I think is this the Antipholus that actually wants to see the courtesan?
Like, no, that was Antipholus of E, because he was getting back at his real wife. So like the idea, and that's why I think this is kind of genius, because we've already set up that Antipholus of S is like, oh, I don't like these big cities full of the devil, and then all of a sudden, this whore that was with his brother sees him and assumes it's the brother, and like he is the only character in this play who would react like this to being approached by a prostitute. Like the idea of like, oh, get away from me, it's the devil. It's beautifully done. Like, it's a really cool moment where it's like, of course, like this exchange between the prostitute and Antipholus of S has to happen.
And as I said before, she's left alone when they both leave, or when Antipholus leaves under arrest from the officer, and she just says straight up, well, I better go tell his wife. And it works. It's just great that it works. It's just like Adriana is not like terribly hung up about her sister being seduced by her husband. And also when a prostitute comes to give her new information, she's like, okay, good, new information. Like, let's the three of us figure this out, because each of us can understand why someone might want to sleep with my husband. So
yeah, he's a hot guy.
So I get it. So scene 4, just chock full of beatings. This is fantastic. And
Dromio of E has such a like sad monologue in this.
Well, yeah, I would almost have to cut it if I put that scene in, because I find all the beatings in here Three Stooges style funny, and that monologue of his is just wrecking. He says, first of all, it starts out again with a pun that lands well for me. He says Antipholus calls him a donkey, and he says, yeah, I must be a donkey to have these long ears. Ears is a pun for years. And he just tells of how his entire life he has been beaten by his owner.
It's perfect. I actually would go the opposite way. I would give him a spotlight, and I would make it. I would break the fourth wall where it becomes this. I would play sad music like the end of the Hulk, like the end of the Incredible Hulk, and I would make it like this moment where he is really coming to terms with his beating, with his constant beating, and then immediately following that, he would be beaten.
That is what happens. So
that's exactly what it should be.
3 lines afterward. Antipholus says something, then Dromio says something else, and Dromio says he speaks Latin to him, and then Antipholus says, shut up, and slaps him. So Dromio You're telling Dromio addresses the audience in plain verse. There's no iambic pentameter here, but it's just this heartbreaking thing about the life he's had to live to date. And then there's a back and forth, and he speaks Latin and then just gets the shit beat out of him.
Yeah.
It is.
It's one of those scenes that makes me think of the old saying. I don't know. It might be apocryphal, but the saying that to make a regular person laugh, you dress somebody up like an old woman and kick them down the stairs. But to make a comedian laugh, it has to be a real old woman. And I think like this is Shakespeare saying like I've got comedic chops. Like this is tragedy that I'm throwing in here, but it's hilarious in context.
You're still gonna laugh when I slap this old lady.
Yeah, we're like this guy is going to like tell us his excruciating details, and then we're going to beat the shit out of him. I think it's perfect.
As long as we get a good Three Stooges slap to it, then you'll be totally down with it. Like that's the key. Like if you see him fly across the room into a closet, then
because as sad as these things are, it actually reminds me a lot of many years ago. I was coming home for Christmas from college. And I used to take the bus from the city to Pennsylvania. And this one particular Christmas, a young man sat next to me. He was maybe a little younger than I at the time. I was probably 20, so he was probably 18. And for an hour and a half, he told me his life story, unsolicited. I didn't say hi to the guy. And he told me like the most awful details about how he was abused at home. And it was so uncomfortable for an hour and a half, and the stories never ended. It wasn't like, well, one time they burnt me with a hot iron.
One bad uncle. Nope.
No. Every single family member took a crack at this kid at some point, which in his world is awful. But from a bystander who was just hearing it, it was so extreme that it became very funny to me. And as soon as I got off the bus, I couldn't help but relate this to my mother. I was like, you have no idea what I just sat through.
My bus ride just was.
Because it's one of those...
If you explain it to someone else, you're like, to be clear, this is horrible, but I need to tell you about this. And you're going to gasp, but then we're both going to laugh our asses off.
Like once I get to like the 6th or 7th family member who beats this kid, you're gonna start seeing a pattern here that can only be described as funny. And believe me, I want to make it very clear that I thought his story was tragic, but it's one of those things where it was so incredibly extreme.
If I could stop any of these things from happening tomorrow, I would. But they've all happened at this point, so we're not hurting anyone.
And it got to the point where you hear so much of it, and he wouldn't stop that I wanted to beat him too.
You know what? Maybe your uncle had a point.
Did you maybe tell some of these people this story?
No, man, there's such a thing as a smackable face. Like,
it's funny you should mention it because I kind of want to smack you around myself. Anyway, I hope
Did you ever consider shutting up?
Yeah. Here's the tactic. Maybe you keep your trap shut.
Did you ever think about doing something with your stupid face?
Oh, that poor child. I'm sure he made it out. He's fine now.
It's a good thing we're publishing this in public. So there's a 1 in a million chance. That
oh, God. Could you imagine?
Better himself by reading Shakespeare.
And he's now ahead of a major podcasting producing company. Well, fuck those two and fuck him especially. I'll show him. But anyway, Dromio is very tragic.
He's very tragic, but also he I appreciate that the pounds joke that I enjoyed 2 scenes ago, he brings back right out of the gate. When he walks up with the rope, he's like I'll serve you 500 at that rate, which essentially is like, oh yeah, no, you can, like, this thing's great for beating people. You can get 500 pounds out of this easily. I'll swing 500 of the rope swings. You can swing 500 of the rope swings. Like, yeah. Right when he shows up, like, yep, here's your beating stick. his joke about he's being beat for the first time by Antipholus in this scene, and the officer again, just while he's beating him, the officer just says, "Be patient, come on," and Dromio is like trying to tell Antipholus to stop beating him, or the cop to stop beating him, and then the officer says, "No, now hold thy tongue." And Dromio's like, "Hold his hands, god damn it, he's beating the shit out of me." The cop A says, "Be patient," B says, "Hold thy tongue." It's just like, it's not the insults that are the problem. He is beating me around the face and body.
Yeah, I mean, it really, like, this whole exchange is really great. Like, at one point there, the Antipholus, when they're all around him saying, "Oh, he's crazy. The poor guy's crazy. Like, can we get some guys in here to tie him down?" And at one point, Antipholus of E goes to the cop, is like, "Hey, you gonna let them do this? I'm your prisoner. You're gonna let them they're gonna set me free, stupid. You want to, like, it's kind of." And he's like, "Oh yeah. Hey, this guy's my prisoner. You can't do this." Like, it's actually very funny.
Yeah, it's just like, well, it was exactly like the moment where it's just like, whoa, I'm under arrest. You can't put me in the nut house, okay?
Yeah,
in the nut house, they're just going to treat me with a bag of nickels and just beat me because we're in the 16th century, and that's how you treat people who have, psychological problems. I like that as soon as Adriana and the courtesan and Luciana come on screen, that they all recognize him as crazy and satanic, but to my reading, it makes all three of them horny. So basically, let me just read it off real fast. Yeah, Adriana first says he seems different because he's beating his slave, which her Antipholus doesn't do. But she says to the good doctor, she says, "I will please you what you will demand," which seems like moderately horny. Then Luciana says, "Oh, alas, how fiery and how sharp he looks," which again is not saying like he's ugly or stigmatic or anything. It sounds kind of like he's handsome. And the courtesan says, "Mark how he trembles in his ecstasy." And so it seems like all three of them, while watching him beat a defenseless person, are just like, "Oh, he seems different. Yeah. Oh my, he's a fiery one." And it's just,
he's the bad boy now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As you pointed out, it's just great that the exorcist that they bring in is just a school teacher.
He's just a guy. He's a high school like science teacher. Yeah, sure, I'll come look at the guy.
It's a wonderful way to just like, you've got like domestic farce with some abuse going in, and just to bring in an exorcism is just great. Like, it's a perfect way to bring everything up approximately 600 notches. And as we established in Taming of the Shrew, slapping holy men is funny.
Yes,
like that's a solid laugh.
The line Antipholus gives is actually pretty funny too. What does he say? Something like he's like, "Oh, the schoolmaster says something like, 'Give me your hand.' He's like, 'I'll give you my hand.' And he slaps him across.
It's great. As far as he knows, he's like the Pope. He's like, "Give me your hand.
Give me your hand."
That is straight out of Marx Brothers or Three Stooges or something. Just like, please give me a hand. I'm giving my hand for town.
"Surely my students will bear me out. We'll bear you out." And then they throw him out of the room. Yeah, this is, as you said in the beginning, this has got a lot of payoff. It's a lot of the things that at first, again, like, maybe Shakespeare isn't necessarily elegantly placing these elements yet or weaving them in as cleanly as he could, but like, he's definitely getting he's reaping the rewards right now in this act.
And like, Antipholus of E seems like you could cast an actor in it who's just like owning the whole scene, because like everything's revolving around him, even though like he's supposed to be tied up and supposed to be the victim of things. Like, the back and forth that he has with Dromio, where he just repeats the things that they did together, is great. He's just like, "Did we get locked out? We got locked out. Did they call us names? They called us names." The staccato back and forth there is great, and it goes on for like 10 lines. And I love this one line that I think, Dromio, Antipholus accuses Dromio of basically not doing what he should have, and Luciana says, I'm witness of everything we've seen so far, and Dromio says, God and the rope maker bear me witness. And like, I love God and the rope maker, where it's just like all that is in heaven, and also the guy that sells the things that you beat slaves with. Like, both of them can attest. The Holy See and the guy that sells the whipping sticks can both attest that I was here at 3:30 p.m.
And the guy down at Ace Hardware.
Yeah. by both God's name and the guy at Ace Hardware. And yes, the line 91 is, or the schoolmaster says, he's possessed. I know it by their pale and deadly looks. They must be bound and laid in some dark room.
In some dark room.
and my note was just, God, I love medieval psychiatry. It's just great.
That'll fix it.
You know what? It's actually reminiscent of when they find in Army of Darkness, when they find Ash and they're like, he's a demon. Let's throw him in the well.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we don't understand this guy. His weird tongues, speaking weirdly. Throw him in the well.
Actually, my wife and I are watching Ozark, and one of the main characters was just thrown in some dark place for a while by a drug cartel. So it's torture. We know it as torture now. But back then, that's how you deal with insanity, or the devil, for that matter.
If you get thrown in a dark place and they come to you 10 minutes or 10 days later and say, are you not crazy anymore? You're going to say, no, I'm not crazy anymore. And you will have gone crazy in the dark place. You will never recover from what happened to you there.
When they ask if you are crazy, you say no.
When someone takes the rock back from the cave.
Yeah, one little like Shakespeare-y thing that I noticed in this particular scene that I hadn't noticed yet is that in the exchange between Adriana and Antipholus of E, Adriana uses the formal you form of the word you, and Antipholus calls her thou and thee, which is normally, it's, the hierarchy. He's the higher status, which I think is interesting. Right. Even in that moment, you keep that status thing going. She even though she's called him a bunch of names, she still addresses him as you.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if Antipholus of S reciprocates more like her speech patterns, or if that's Antipholus of E being an all-around asshole.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that. I'm going to have to go back and read the Antipholus of S and Adriana scene to see how they address each other, because that's an interesting idea.
I'll say what jumped out at me, reminiscent of Gentlemen of Verona, is that we got a funny violent scene going on, but just like slapstick, and then Antipholus just threatens to rip her eyes out.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to look at me, huh? Well, guess what? I'm going to tear both of your eyes out of your head.
These nails.
Whoa, let's back it up. I thought we were going for a fun romp comedy vibe here, less of tearing out of women's eyes, but just like Gentlemen of Verona, it's just like, wait, whoa. There was some weird stuff going on, but I didn't think we were actually going to maul someone. But he just goes right there, and it's just as in Two Gentlemen of Verona, they just like blow right past it.
Shakespeare so far is incapable of the romp. Like he's like, you think it's going to be, oh, it's funny, he doesn't know the other exists, that kind of thing. But then it's like all of a sudden people are possessed by the devil and threatening, beating the shit out of slaves and about to rip their own wives' eyeballs out, which is leads me to that what I was saying about this is like Oedipus Rex. This is like as hardcore as Oedipus Rex, but without the incest.
But for funzos, yeah.
I mean,
you could teach them back to bath and say, yeah, it's about mistaken identity, and and once you learn the truth, what does a rational person do? Tear out someone's eyes. That's
he doesn't know he slept with his own mother. Wah, 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 wah. Jocasta.
Oh, Jocasta.
Oh, Joe. That's what the original title for Oedipus Rex was. Oh, Jocasta. Shake my head and rip my own eyes out. Yeah, it's like Shakespeare hasn't disappointed with like he just goes like knowing what we know now, having read these three comedies back to back to back. The idea that Midsummer Night's Dream is, yeah, there's some maybe strange elements, but it never gets like this, you know, like it never gets this dark. Like this is so dark.
And needlessly so. That said, it's, I don't know, I just feel like he's getting the beats right here. And when at the very end of the scene, which is the end of the act, when the other Antipholus comes on screen with his swords, or with his sword singular, I think Dromio has a sword too, and everyone just loses their shit. Like, they're loose again. It's just funny when they're just like, it's funny for, in like a, and again, like a cartoon way to have like someone be pulled off in chains on through the left door, and then through the right door, they seem to come back in with their knives out or with their swords out, and everyone like screams and runs away. Like it's Scooby-Doo logic, but I find it very, very fun and enjoyable to imagine putting it on the stage.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's really hilarious to build up the idea that these people think the guy is possessed by the devil. And then
he's got a sword.
And then the next beat is that same who they think is the same guy coming in armed. It's a very funny thing.
I think that's actually like Exorcist 3. Like you have the guy off screen, and then the guy walks back on screen with a sword. You're like, oh jeez. Well, can't type the devil.
Yeah, this was I think this act was pretty pleasing. This is one of the more pleasing acts. Like this, as you said, this is the one with the most payoffs. Although there is one last fat joke in there. Dromio calls the chef's maid or whatever she is a mountain of mad flesh.
That's just terrible.
One last jab.
Yeah, I purposely like just like blow past those like speed bumps. And like in my brain, I'm just like, oh yeah, you could cut this. It's unnecessary. So as long as she doesn't appear as a character in Act 5, then my brain is just like, yep, nope, not going to acknowledge that. Like, if it was possible to acknowledge the things they do to Kate in Taming of the Shrew, then I would, but it's obviously not. But here, I'm just like, ugh. It's like any other. It's like if you went to a stand-up show and the second comedian was like, fat chicks, am I right? You'd just be like, all right, I'm going to pull up my... That's where my brain goes. It's like I'm pulling out my phone and just being like, okay, I will wait for the next comedian because... Jesus, no thank you.
It'd be awesome if she does make an appearance and she's perfectly normal. She's a normal person. It's Dromio, who we've already established is kind of an idiot anyway.
And then they all laugh. They're like, oh, you see, the funny thing is he's brain damaged from how much we've beaten him. So he can't recognize the basic proportions of another human being. That's what's so funny. Oh, he'll never know that she's beautiful because I caved in his skull.
It's like a Shallow Hal situation. Only permanent.
A flashback where his head was beaten by his slave master.
Yeah, it's like a reverse Shallow Hal, you know. This was a good one.
Yeah, I'm sincerely happy with this one. I needed a flow chart to understand what the hell was happening, and I think that's the problem with my brain is like I say I would kind of like let it go and just enjoy watching the scene, but I do think it would be hard for me to sit in the audience and not you would either have to like yield to it or like be utterly lost trying to figure out what the fuck it meant for.
Yeah, I think you would definitely have to use like I think about that stuff a lot. Back in the day when I was an artist, I remember that I would probably use something like similar costuming, but color variations so that it would be something that is believable that they would make the mistake that it's the same person, but the audience could clearly. Like Dromio would have basically the same costume as Dromio. Dromio of E would be dressed as Dromio of S. But there would be a slight color, like maybe there's a blue sleeve and the other one had a red sleeve situation, you know, so like it's believable that the characters might still see each other as, or make the mistake that it's the person they think it is, but the audience can still keep track of who they're looking at.
That's from the casting point of view, but also straight up from the MacGuffin point of view. Like I wanted to read off the flow chart, but obviously I forgot to carry it here. But like just to think through it, I think the course of the act is a guy who wants to get to Persia, so he needs to ask for money from the guy who had the chain. The guy who need to get the chain asks the wrong Antipholus. The wrong Antipholus sent the right Dromio out for a rope. The wrong Dromio goes back to his house to look for to ask for money. Adriana sends Luciana for money. She comes back, gives the money back to Adriana, who gives the money to Dromio. Dromio comes back, gives the money to the wrong person. Again, the prostitute, for no necessary reason, is looking to trade a ring for a chain. It's just like 19 different moving parts within an act. And it looked like my notes looked like an insane pirate map. Like like in the 30th year, where the guy that had the original pirate map has gone insane. Like it's what you find
One-eyed Willie.
When you think you're gonna find the treasure and you open up the chest, it's just this crazy map inside, and you're like, oh, I've wasted my life. This is insanity.
Yeah, and I think that when this episode airs, I think we should post a picture of that of your chart, because it really is like a Pepe Sylvia situation where no Pepe, like Pepe doesn't exist.
Who's this guy? And again, if I might be misremembering, but I think there was still no fucking reason to introduce the chain. Like it was fun in this act, but it was so forced in the earlier act to just be like, oh, well, I think I'll buy a chain in order to put this gun on a wall. I don't know. I feel like you could put this on and just cut the third act entirely on the assumption that, like, if people are going to enjoy this, they'll just be like, chain, what the fuck? Nah, I don't care. Whatever.
You know, that might have been Shakespeare helping the audience out. I think because you have not only the chain, but not the chain. I haven't had a beer in like months, but somehow I'm like, I'm slurring. Not only the chain, but the ring is involved. And I think one Antipholus has the chain and the other has the ring. So I think that might be Shakespeare helping out the actors and the audience, be like, okay, this is this Antipholus and this is the other Antipholus, because one has the chain.
Oh, yeah, you could actually have a big Mr. T chain. Yeah, and a big, I guess, Mr. T ring as well. Yeah, that's how you tell it apart. You're two actors who both have mohawks and resplendent beards.
Treat her right. You treat your mama right.
Oh, I'm gonna beat you.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that was just a convention for, to keep it clear.
No, you're right, but visually that would be a lot more. Yeah, and you could have the guy who is waiting for the ship to Persia to just look like a sailor, like dressed like Donald Duck, effectively. You could have the goldsmith just be dressed like I don't know what a goldsmith. What does a blacksmith carry or whatever?
And that's the thing with Shakespeare, and I think what is daunting to a lot of people, especially like when we get to the histories, man. Like that's some hardcore, like keeping track of the characters.
I'm the third Duchess. Oh, fuck me.
Maybe that's why Shakespeare threw in things like in front of Romeo and Juliet, he has that famous narration at the beginning of it, like as like, look, before we begin, let me just clear some shit up. So like I don't get questioned. I get a lot of letters. So let me just make sure that this is the Romeo side. This is the Juliet side. They're fighting, but they're in love. Everybody got it? All right, let's go. Hit it.
He actually had yellow text in front of outer space, and it was like, listen, fucking A. There's a fucking trade war, and these are the good guys. These are the bad guys. This guy's looking for that guy. Just it's fine. You know what? Actually, ignore what I said. We're going to start the movie.
Darth Vader obsessed with finding Luke Skywalker.
I've got to find Luke Skywalker.
What these two idiots don't know is that we Elizabethans did that sort of expositional baloney in front of things all the time. I couldn't walk down the hall without some crony yelling, "Now entering by the grace of God, Queen of England, France and Ireland, defender of the faith, kicker of the balls, knitter of itchy sweaters, yada yada yada." I always wanted a cool gangster name like Lizzie Salami or Lizzie Boom Butts. Such is life. Fat and Greasy is presented by the players Chuck and Gabe. Theme music, A Robust Crew by Darren Curtis. Next week, the finale of Comedy of Errors. And for me, a conglomerate of terrors. Ooh.